If I asked you why Thanos actually raised half the universe, what would your answer be? You would probably answer something like the resources were limited and he had to eradicate half the population to sustain the resources. And that reason is given by Thanos himself. Very rational thinking for a supervillain, don't you think? Well, in the comics, it's a completely different story. In the comics, he doesn't eradicate half the universe just because of the resources. He does it for a reason that makes him truly a villain. The MCU version. Let's discuss about this. So, in the MCU version, Thanos is just a big purple dude who wants to get all the Infinity Stones in his hand and snap his fingers and eradicate half the population of in every planet in the entire universe, and all that just to balance the resources with the people. He even says that it's not cruelty, it's mercy. In his mind, he's the only person who's willing to make a hard call and wipe out half the universe so that the other half can live a peaceful life. And look, for a movie, it kind of works out. It has a twisted logic to it, but still. On the other hand, Comic Thanos does not have a clean motivation. He just does it because he's in love with death. That's right. Death is a person. This is where it gets good. In Marvel Comics, death is actually an entity. It's not just a concept that happens to you. Usually depicted as a clothed skeleton figure, basically the Grim Reaper, but treated as a real character with her own personality and her own place in the universe's power structure. Right up there with entities like Eternity and Infinity. And Thanos from basically the beginning of his existence. This is a guy who was born looking different from every other Titan, kind of an outcast his whole childhood. Thanos becomes obsessed with death, not scared of her, in love with her. He wants to win her affection, he wants to marry her, and the way he decides to impress her, the way he tries to woo death, is by killing people, as many as possible. He thinks that if he becomes the greatest bringer of death the universe has ever seen, she will finally love him back. That's it. That's the real motivation. It's not a policy, it's not philosophy, it's a rejected obsessive lover trying to impress his crush by committing genocide. This is literally why he wants the Infinity Gauntlet. So, this is the part where I think the entire Infinity Gauntlet storyline changes, depending if you have only seen the movie. In the comics, specifically the original Infinity Gauntlet storyline from 1991, Thanos doesn't collect the Infinity Stones because he has calculated the number of deaths required to attain sustainability in the universe. He collects them because he wants ultimate power, so he can perform the biggest, most impressive act of devotion possible, wiping out half of all life in the universe as a gift, as an offering to death. He literally builds a shrine to her. He constructs a massive garden sized monument in her honor after the snap. In some versions of the story, he even gives up his own power and steps back from being all powerful, specifically because he's trying to prove his love is selfless. Like, look, I don't even want the power for myself. I did this whole thing for you. And the funny thing is, it still doesn't work. That's the tragic slash unsettling part. Death is kind of unmoved, even annoyed, at points in different stories. So Thanos spends decades of cosmic continuity chasing a being who fundamentally cannot love him back. And he keeps escalating the body count, trying to get her attention. If you think about it this way, the snap wasn't a policy decision, it was a banquet of flowers made out of half of the universe. Okay, so here's why I think this is way scarier than the actual movie. I think movie Thanos, as good as he is a villain who you can argue with. People do argue with him. He had a point. Resources are finite. All that. He's a philosophy you can debate on a whiteboard. Comic Thanos isn't a philosophy. He's not making an argument you can push back with logic. Because there's no logic to begin with. An all powerful being whose entire justification for mass murder is a crush. That's not rational villainy. That's obsession wearing the costume of rational villainy. And I think that's a much scarier idea. A guy who's smart enough and powerful enough to convince himself and everyone around him that there's a coherent reason for what he's doing, when he really when really the reason is just he wants a girl who will never want him back. It also kind of makes him pathetic, like honestly, which I think adds to it. He's not a stoic philosopher king making the hard call for the universe. He's the most powerful being alive, and he's still just a guy getting rejected. Let's discuss few other differences between the comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thanos' appearances changes constantly in the comics. No consistent situation. His design shifts depending on the artist. The movie actually gave him a much more consistent, iconic look than most of his comic history. He died and came back more times than I can count. Comic Thanos treats death, including his own, like a revolving door. Death herself has resurrected him multiple times, partly because she doesn't want him around in the afterlife bothering her. He's not always the final boss. In a lot of comic book stories, Thanos is much more of a recurring cosmic threat who pops up, causes chaos, gets dealt with, and comes back later, rather than the singular endgame villain the MCU built him up across 10 years of movies. So, yeah, next time someone tells you that Thanos had a point, you can hit them with this. The MCU gave him a dead dog. The comics gave him a broken heart and an unhealthy way of dealing with it.